Dear students, our next essay is Postmodern Blackness, written by Bell Hooks. Bell Hooks is one of the most known feminists in the US. Her writings are a challenge to the male hegemonic rule over women. So she is always a feminist, a well-known feminist in the US, and she will always try to overpower the male hegemonic rule, the reign of males, white males particularly, over women. A huge defender of black female identity. She is always a spokesperson of black females. She deliberately writes her name non-capitalized. That is very significant about bell hooks. Bell and hooks, both of them are non-capitalized. And she has done this deliberately as to portray the underestimation and belittlement of black women's significance in the white scenario. So she is an Afro-American, an African living, staying in America. So in order to show how Afro-American females or Afro-American people are always underestimated or belittled in inhuman conditions in America, she has deliberately chosen to write her name in non-capitalized form, and she is almost known as the prototype of black females in the literary and the critical scenario. This particular essay, Postmodern Blackness, is written during 1990s, and it is written as a philosophical essay. It's about the thought. When you think about postmodernism, it is thought as a most well-known trend for its thoughts of heterogeneity, the descended subject, and recognition of others. So postmodernism is a particular movement which always tried to give a voice to the marginalized people. Recognition is given to the others, and postmodernists claim that they try to decenter the subjects, decentered subject, the grand narratives, the main narratives are being broken down, and the marginalized voices are given voices. That's what they claim. Thought it would help empower the underestimated and overlooked voices in the society. That's what the belief was when postmodernism was first formulated as a movement. People thought that it would empower the undertrodden people, the marginalized voices in the society. Yet, Bell Hooks understands the postmodernist falseness and tries to challenge it. In this particular essay, she actually brings to limelight the real color of postmodernism, though it is considered to be a movement against uh, any kind of inequality. Actually, it is only, Bell Hooks says that it is only a continuation of what modernity or the traditional concepts were. The traditional concepts of modernity always were based on the white male hegemony. And Bell Hooks, through this particular essay, says that postmodernism is also a continuation of all those trends. The African American writer mixes what is literary with what is racial. Bell Hooks, who is an African American writer, she mixes what is literary with what is racial. She attempts to evoke the exclusion meted out by the postmodern discourse on black culture and literary experiences. So she analyzes, she makes a comprehensive analysis of the postmodern discourse, and she says that there is a kind of exclusion towards black culture and black literary experiences. They are never included. Inclusion is not seen in postmodernism as they claim to be. She criticizes that the two central concepts of postmodernism, otherness and difference, are ignored when it fails to voice the blacks in the US. So she is taking the case of Afro-Americans in United States and citing the example of the life and culture of Afro-Americans. She says that postmodernism is only a fake movement. It does not bring into practice what it claims to bring. Hooks deems it her mission to assert the close relationship between Afro American culture and postmodernism. So she thinks that it is her purpose as a scholar of Afro American literature or Afro American culture. She thought that it is her duty to assert the close relationship between Afro-American culture and postmodernism. Many of the people believe that there is no relationship between Afro-American culture or heritage and postmodernism. She writes about her past experience in a pub where she had a heated debate over the question of whether postmodernism is relevant to blackness or not with a group of guests, majority were whites. So, in this particular essay, she is speaking about an experience she had in a pub. In the pub, there were a group of white guests, and along with these white guests, there was a black guest as well. And she was, as a scholar, she used to speak to them quite often. And in that particular day, she spoke about the relationship between Afro-American culture and postmodernism, how postmodernism is relevant in Afro-American culture. But when she started speaking about this, she could see that all the white guests were just passively looking at her as if it is not their concern. And there was only one black guest over there, and he gave a very negative reply to her assertion. He said that there is no need to relate Afro American culture, black culture, and postmodernism. The only black guest was negative in his reply, and this gave Hooks strong impetus to defend the black experience's relevance to the postmodernist movement. So, this particular incident in the pub, the negative reply that she received from the black person over there, it actually gave a kind of fear spirit to bell hooks, and she thought that it is a duty to defend and to assert the black experiences into the postmodern discourse. She also chose to establish the close attachment of black females to this particular theory, because postmodernism theory is always focused, claims that it is always focused on decenteredness. There is no center at all. That is, whites or the males are never the center of the universe. That's what they claim. But when you look at practically, their practical application, you could see that blacks are always alienated from the postmodernist discourse, and so also the black females in a kind of in an extreme manner are isolated, are alienated from the postmodernist discourse. So she chose to establish the close attachment of black females to the theory of postmodernism. Bell Hooks stresses the fact that postmodernism is wholly independent and negligent of Afro-Americans' culture. Okay, she criticizes, saying that postmodernism is wholly negligent of Afro-American. It just ignores Afro-American culture. She asserts that this movement is overwhelmed by the white male presence, though it claims that it believes in decentrism or decenteredness, though it believes that it is against any kind of hegemony. You can really see in the real aspect, you can see that postmodernism is always overwhelmed by white male presence. An example is quoted in Megan Morris' bibliography, which is word of any written work by black females. So Megan Morris is an Australian scholar of cultural studies. She is a person who also spoke in favor of gender equality. But what is ironic is the fact that in her works, there is no work, in her bibliography, there is no work written by a black female. That shows that even though in a theoretical manner, they would speak a lot of things about equality, about decentedness, about the destruction of grand narratives, but in the real core, they are actually all they are actually influenced by the white male presence. Hooks also reproaches the majority of black writers who refuse to take part and address this topic. So, criticizing the postmodern white writers is done by bell hooks, but at the same time, she also criticizes the black writers because she feels that they refuse to take part in this particular discussion and debate. They never think that it is their duty to see the relationship between postmodernism and black culture or Afro-American culture. She agrees with Cornel West. Cornel West is a postmodernist black writer who believes that black authors are marginalizing themselves by not merging into postmodernism. So the black writers, they think that postmodernism is not their area. It is not a cup of tea, their cup of tea. So they always alienate themselves away from postmodernism. But Cornel West and Bell Hooks say that by doing so, they are actually marginalizing themselves. They are asserting the fact that they are inferior to others. But Bell Hooks says that we should not do this. Black Americans should not do this. Cornel West can be seen as an encouragement to merge into the depths of postmodernism and via assert their identity. So Cornel West is one among the few black American writers who have merged themselves into postmodernist realm, into the postmodernist discourse. So Bell Hooks says that, like Cornel West, others should also merge themselves into the postmodernist discourse so that they will be able to assert their identity. Bell Hooks thinks that postmodernist discourse is a wide space to voice their needs and desires. She thinks that postmodernism is the apt arena where they can voice their voices, where they can express their voices and their needs and desires. She believes that it is the immense spot where their black identity lies and from which it shall emerge. So, postmodernist discourse is the correct space. It is the immense spot from where one can emerge, from where a black female or black writer can emerge. She voices her discontentment with the postmodernism theory and its aftermath on black society. So she is against all that is going along with postmodernism. She says that postmodernism should always give a space to the black writers and vice versa. Black writers should always fight for a space in postmodernist discourse. Hooks also believes that the postmodernist critique of identity should be completely reshaped. Okay, the postmodernist critique of identity. How postmodernists define identity, that also must be reshaped. That is a demand from Hooks. This critique is racist, assigning certain characteristics and traits to black people based on color. She says that when you look at how postmodernists define identity, you can see that it is always racist in its nature, because they always assign identity by looking at or by assigning certain characteristics and traits to black people based on color. That is, we know that there is a kind of othering even in postmodernism. Based on the color and race of the blacks, there is always an othering in terms of identity. She feels that it should exhibit the good image and bright portrait of the blacks and their culture. So, by reshaping this critique of identity, postmodernists should give a real picture of what blacks are. Okay, should portray the good image and the bright portrait of the blacks and their culture. References are also made about rap music, through which the blacks could voice themselves to make their voice heard at the time. So bell hooks have also made references to rap music. We know that rap music is so native to African culture, and she says that that is the only realm through which blacks could voice themselves to make their voice heard at that particular time. So she says that popular culture is an arena where the blacks could voice their voices, could express their voices, could express their needs and desires. Hooks notes that the black culture can be flourished through their popular culture. And then she speaks about the difference between the two divisions of postmodernist Afro-American rights group. They are essentialists and nationalists. Hooks sheds light on the postmodern Afro-American rights group, which was split into essentialists and nationalists. So there was a particular group called postmodern Afro-American rights group. So that is a rights group, but unfortunately it has been divided into two, which are essentialists and nationalists. And essentialists are a group of people who attribute great importance to the individual identity of blacks. They evoke the crucial significance of Afro-American history and heritage. They say that Afro-American history and heritage are so crucial in the identity of each Afro-American. Hence, should not merge into the American society, for it will destroy history and heritage. So they essentially thought that since their history and heritage are so crucial and so significant, they should not merge into the Afro-American society, because it will destroy their own antique heritage and their own true culture. So they are so orthodox in their mentality. They have gone to that particular extreme level where they never encourage a kind of assimilation into American society. This created animosity in the American society, as essentialists were heading to create a separate identity. So they were actually essentially say that Afro-American group should isolate themselves from the American society. Even though they are staying in American society, they should isolate themselves from American society so that their cultural heritage can be maintained and retained. But this would naturally create a kind of animosity in American society, because America is a hot pot of many different races and many different cultures. So if one particular community isolate themselves from others, it will create a lot of animosity in that particular scenario. And the second group is called nationalists. They believe that United States is a melting pot where various cultures can peacefully assimilate. Believed that the United States is a melting pot where various cultures can peacefully assimilate. So nationalists are just opposite to the essentialists. They believe that since US is a melting pot, there are different cultures where Afro Americans can assimilate themselves with. And nationalists encourage assimilation of their race into the whole array of cultures in the US. They thought that it is not necessary to isolate themselves from the American society, whereas they should merge into the American society, they should merge into the different races and cultures of American society. Bell Hooks does not agree with both hypotheses. So when you look at the two divisions of the Afro-American rights movement, both of them are extremes. Both of them belong to the two extremes. Bell Hooks does not agree with either of these groups. Her view is that only the Black Power movement is able to preserve the Black race culture and its identity. Only the Black Power movement. There should be a new Black Power movement, which should be single. There should be no demarcations, there should be no divisions, but a single Black Power movement, which should be able to preserve the Black race culture and identity. The Black movement was able to change several perspectives that Black people had on civil rights. Okay, she believed that it will be able to change several perspectives. When you look at Black movement in the early stages, the rights movement was single before the division into essentialists and nationalists. It was one single movement, and it was able to bring in a lot of changes in the perspective of Afro Americans regarding their civil rights. They never believed in their own rights in American society, but it was through the Black movement that their perspectives changed and they began to fight for their own civil rights. And it also gave full emphasis on individuality. The Black movement gave full emphasis on individuality. Its only flaw was it was too essentialist, but she says that it was too essentialist in nature. She calls for a new thinking. So she says that, Bell Hooks says that it is now time to bring about a new movement, a new thinking, to give birth to a new Black Power movement comprehensive of all Afro-American experiences, so that its influence on other races shall be extinct. So she says that it is high time that they formulated another movement which would be comprehensive, which would be inclusive of all the Afro-American experiences, and it should have a relation with the other races of America as well. So to conclude, Postmodern Blackness portrays a brave attempt. Her resistive spirit instigated her to face a whole movement with its male hegemonic influence. So it is fierce spirit of Bell Hooks that can be visualized in this particular essay. She is totally against the male hegemonic influence. She opens up the deficiencies that the postmodernist discourse is doomed with. Though a lot of people, though a lot of critics were speaking very high about postmodernism, she was the only person who spoke against postmodernist discourse. It is a discourse in which the black community's disparagement is portrayed not only by denying voice to black males, but also to black females. She says that postmodernism is an arena which does not give any voice to the blacks and does not give a space to the black females in particular, blacks in general and black females in particular. So she speaks so critically about negative criticism is being meted out against postmodernism in this particular case. Thank you.